I was right and the other person is wrong. I hate to even say it that way, but sometimes you just got to be that blunt for people to get it through their thick head.
Shalom, and welcome to False Messiah, where we expose Christianity's distortion of the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Tanakh. In this video, we expose the hypocrisy and double standards of Courtney Smith as she attacks one of my videos. In her video, she attempts to debunk one of the claims that I made in one of my videos debunking her false interpretation of Genesis 3:15. She doesn't address any other of my arguments, such as that Genesis 3:15 is never found in the New Testament, that Christianity's understanding of Satan is distorted and was influenced by Zoroastrianism, not from the Hebrew Bible, that the context of Genesis 3:15 is about curses for disobeying God, not messianic prophecy, that the word Isha, or the woman in Genesis 3:15, throughout the entire chapter refers to Eve, not some other woman, that the word Isha itself cannot be referring to a virgin because Isha generally refers to a married woman, and that if Genesis 3:15 is about the Messiah, that means it's not Jesus, because Jesus never fulfilled it by crushing the head of Satan. Satan is alive and well. Instead, she attempts to debunk a grammatical error in my video, and she does this by constantly appealing to Hebrew speakers.
And ask native Hebrew speakers a question. So native Hebrew speakers, without any further context, what is this word? We're just going to show more proof from actual Hebrew teachers. And the reason why this person knows this is because they actually teach Hebrew.
But what happens when a Hebrew speaker from Courtney's own religion points out that Courtney misunderstands Hebrew and is completely ignorant of Hebrew grammar? Does she retract her statement or adjust her original claim to fit with the facts? First, let's point out the number of grammatical mistakes that Courtney makes in her original video, which she does not address in this video.
He takes you to Genesis 16 because he wants you to believe that it's the same word used there as is used in Genesis 3:15 in regards to the prophecy of a virgin birth. Okay? So here's the problem with that. It's not the same word. It's not the same Hebrew word at all. It has two totally different connotations.
Now, as I pointed out in my original video, this is false because the word Zareich in Genesis 16:10 and Zara in Genesis 3:15 share the same root word, zera, which means seed or offspring. So they both share the same root word and they only differ with the suffixes. So they essentially mean the same thing. But don't take my word for it. Let's have a look at what this site, JewFact, says. If the same Hebrew root is used in two different places, the words and their meanings are probably related. According to ancienthebrew.org, a child root is formed by adding one of the consonant/vowels to the front, middle, or end of the parent root. All the child roots formed from one parent root are directly related in meaning to the parent root. According to achla.com, by adding vowels and additional letters, we get more ideas that are related to the original word, but each one just a little different. So when Courtney claims,
Notice the word in bold is different than the first word all the way to the right. Totally different word. It has two totally different connotations.
she is lying right through her teeth, or she's just ignorant with the Hebrew language.
And if you would speak to any other woman, you would say Zerach with a k at the back, okay? Not a as in a feminine female sound at the end.
Now, we've already pointed out in our original video that she is distorting the Hebrew language, but let's look at what others have to say. According to wikiwan.com, a feminine chaf suffix has a tseri under it, which would make it say ech, not ach. According to HebrewForChristians.com, so this is a Christian site, a feminine chaf suffix is ech, with a tseri on bottom. And according to BibleHebrewMadeEasy.weebly.com, a feminine chaf suffix is ech, with a tseri. So the way to say your seed in feminine is Zareich, the word used in Genesis 16:10. It has a feminine suffix, just like the word Zareich in Genesis 3:15.
All the women in the Bible that bore children, you would think at least one of them would have been told, and her seed. Yours, hers, yours. But nobody was told that.
Again, as I pointed out in my original video, the word in Genesis 16:10, Zareich, is feminine. So a woman was told your seed in feminine. So Courtney is either lying right through her teeth or is completely ignorant of the Hebrew. But being that Courtney appeals to Hebrew speakers in her video, let's have a look at what a Hebrew-speaking Christian has to think about her arguments. This person, who goes by the profile name Lior, comments on Courtney's video by saying, "I'm a native Hebrew speaker and I'm sorry, but you're misleading the audience." He further writes, "You clearly don't know Hebrew." So then Courtney responds by saying that he's focusing on Tuvia more than the truth. Who would have thought? He's a Tuvia Singer follower, even though he said that he disagrees with Rabbi Singer and thinks he's dishonest. So this just shows the level of cognitive dissonance that Courtney has. And this guy rightly points out that Courtney is obsessed with Rabbi Singer. He further writes, "I'm writing for people who don't know Hebrew and rely on your misunderstanding of the language and overstating the facts." He further writes, "I know that Genesis 3:15 is the only place where Zareich is used, but it means something only if we argue that a seed of a woman is something exceptional in the Bible. And it's not. Genesis 16 proves it when it talks about the seed of Hagar. It talks there about seed in a feminine way, which just throws your argument out of the window. Just so people will understand, the words Zareich and Zareich are both feminine possessive pronouns. The only difference between them is that Zareich is second person and Zareich is third person. So there's nothing special about talking about the seed of a woman in biblical Hebrew. Also, the mental gymnastics you go through in order to say that the woman in Genesis 3:15 is different from the woman in Genesis 3:16 is just saddening. He's quite right about that. He further writes, "By the way, if you would have really known Hebrew grammar, you would have known that your interpretation of a mysterious woman in verse 15 can't be true." So then Courtney responds by saying, "No, you started with a false appeal to authority to sway those who might agree with me." So we see that when an appeal to authority of a Hebrew speaker goes against what Courtney is saying, she rejects it, and she accuses the person of using it of being a Tuvia Singer follower. But when it goes for her, then she uses it. So she has a very clear double standard. When an appeal to authority of a Hebrew speaker works for her, then she uses it. When it works against her, she rejects it. A very clear double standard, and just shows the level of dishonesty that she has. But he responds by saying there's no false appeal to authority. Quite the opposite. I wrote these comments because you are the one who appealed to the Hebrew while exhibiting no real knowledge of the language. Also, you keep assuming stuff about me, trying to make this personal, because you clearly cannot interact on the linguistic level. I don't say it lightly and not trying to offend, but this is just a fact to anyone who knows Hebrew. He further writes, "There are more things I could address from your response, but it's just ridiculous, so I truly don't know if these things are worth an answer." He ends off by saying, "With every phrase you write, it just shows how ignorant you're of the Hebrew language. And it's fine, you don't need to be an expert of the language, but don't do videos like that and mislead people." So Courtney, like her false Messiah and false God Jesus, who had a double standard when criticizing the Pharisees for setting aside the command of honoring your parents when he himself did the same thing, Courtney also has a double standard by criticizing others for grammatical errors when she herself made grammatical errors which others pointed out to her and she refuses to acknowledge.